Okay, I think what we'll do, we'll start now. So first of all, I just want to thank you all for making the time. Just a quick check of who's here. We have Chris from IVEC. As I said, I have Dave and Cameron in the room. I have Hoyland from QCF, Paul from URSA, Richard. I have Scott from IVEC, I believe, and Shane is from Intersect. So welcome all. So first of all, I am going to run this meeting with a brief report of the progress made during Sprint 2. And I would then hand over to David, who will give a demo of the functionality that we have tested and produced during Sprint 2. And following that, we will hand over to Terry, from AF, who will be giving a summary of the architecture change that was referred to in an email from that I know Richard had sent to the nodes earlier today. So that's the overview of the running order for the meeting. And now the slides and my slides and Terry's slides I will make available to participants and to the steering committee following this meeting. Before I proceed, any questions? Okay. And we also have Stephen, Dart and Terry online now as well. Okay, just to recap, I am, for those who are late, I'm recording this session. Okay, I'm just going to pull this to full screen. If there's any issues with this, let me know. Also, David, if you can let me know, that would be great. Okay. Sprint 2. So Sprint 2 began on the 10th of Feb and ended last Friday. We are doing 3-week sprints. When we started Sprint 2, we had 39 points. That included points that had been carried over from Sprint 1. At the end of the 3 weeks period, we had completed 23 story points, meaning that they have been developed and passed QA, and we have 6 further story points in test. Now, the focus of Sprint 2 has been AAF integration, allowing the user to provision a reX ID based on their AAF credentials. Plans for Sprint 3. Now, Sprint 3 has begun on Monday this week and will run for another 3 weeks on the 21st of March. Our plans at this stage for Sprint 3 are completion of remaining stories, defect resolution, performance enhancements, and any UI enhancements and inclusion of branding. We are going through, as referred to in Richard's earlier email, a period of replanning where we are looking at, we do need to identify extra stories to allow us to revise the architecture, i.e. to allow the portal to interface with the database. Those stories are under identification at the moment, and I hope to be able to speak with Richard tomorrow with an initial assessment of what the impact of the timeline will be. Last Friday, I sent out release notes to the node reps about the staging server, what we had deployed to the staging server at that stage. Again, I'm just referring here to how the staging server can be accessed. I will be providing another version of release notes by the end of this week, where you will find where the staging server will be updated with Sprint 2 functionality. Now, the rest of the slideshow really concentrates on the stories that have been completed in Sprint 2 and the defects that the stories we've completed in Sprint 2, the stories we have identified at the moment in Sprint 3, but those stories obviously will be augmented with extra stories to support the database conversion. And I also have in this slide deck the defects that have been raised to date. Now, I'm just going to show you the format. I've just listed the stories in this format, the name of the story. The numbering there is our internal JIRA numbering that we use within Intersect. So really, I listed the issue, how many story points had been allocated to it, and its current status. Now, I'm not going to go through all the rest of the slides, since it's probably more going to be a repetition of what's here, just an identification of the stories that have been completed in the sprints. But you will be able to see those when I send the slide deck out too. So at that point, what I'm going to do is end my portion and allow folk to ask questions. So I will just target individuals. If you don't have any questions, that's fine. It's just to maintain some order, and we're not all talking at once. Chris, do you have any questions on what I've presented so far?
No, nothing that comes to mind straight up.
Okay. Hoyland?
Do we have to unmute?
Okay.
No, I don't have questions.
Okay. Paul? Sorry, Paul?
No.
Okay. Richard, do you have any questions or anything to say on that?
None from me at this point.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
No, none from me either.
Shane?
No, nothing at this stage.
Stephen?
All okay here.
Okay.
Please proceed.
So what I will do now is hand over to David, who will give a presentation of the demo.
Okay, so here we are. We have the reX portal, and just as last time, I also have the underlying identity management web interface just to show you what's going on behind the scenes. The first story, slightly trivial one in a way. It's a forgot password link that allows you to get a password reset link sent. So I'm kind of assuming that it's not of great interest to people, so I won't drill down into it unless people specifically ask. The next thing, as Siobhan said, it's about integrating with the AF this sprint. And so here's a big orange button for sign me in, register me through the AF. I'll just go back to the underlying system, and you can see on this list, oh, it's timing me out. Oh, no. You can see on this list that there is no David C. There is this David Clegg user, but not David Clark. Okay, I'm just going to refresh this and log in again. No, sorry. Oh, great. Sorry, folks. This password is quite long. I'm going to push on without it so that we can keep going. If anybody doubts that or thinks I've got stuff up my sleeve or I'm pulling a fast one, I promise you I'm not. But if you want me to, I can work this out and I can log in if you like. But I saw somebody shrug, so it's okay. Okay, so basically, if I click on the AF logo there, it allows me to come down here, select who I am, log in as me using my my Intersect identity. And there we go. We're redirected back to the reX portal, and it's picked up my details, created me a username, and it's now asking me to confirm that I want to register in the reX system via my AF credentials, which I do. So I click on that, and it's waiting. Now, excuse me, at the moment, although I can now log in using my AF credentials, in order to use the system as we currently have it, you really need a password. So it's kind of obliging you to set a password. So I'll do that. It has also sent me an email saying you've been accredited to reX, and making sure that I know. You can see there it says password has been sent. So that's me creating a user, a reX identity, and now hopefully what I can do is I can move to another window which we had here a little while ago. So this is an incognito window, which means it's basically a different session, and it shows that I can now log in either normally, like this, or I can go to the AF and use my credentials in the same way as I did when I signed up. And so here, I'm now logged in. So that the first window I showed the creation of the identity, and the second, it was the use of it. So other things that have been added is now there's a lot more ability for the user to manage their own account. If I go into here, you can see I can see all my details, and I can edit them. And this follows the same model that we try to use throughout the system, whereby I can change things here, say that's the changes, and then it asks me for a confirmation, which I'll do. You'll notice that some of the response here is quite slow. This is going to be addressed a bit later when we talk about the architecture. Other thing here, again, change my password. This was another thing that was identified for this sprint, a story that we really need, the ability to do these things. And there it is. So I'll just close that one and go back to the main portal, where if I sign out as me, and I can log in now as a user who is a group admin. And we'll show you some of the group management stuff that we've added. So Jane here is a group manager and has some allocations. We haven't changed the terminology around allocations here. I know that was identified in the last demonstration, but we've been working on crisping up the vocabulary and the glossary throughout, and once that work is finished, that's when we'll push this into the interface. So if I drill down into allocation 1 here, you can see there's a summary of this allocation, the 4 different groups associated with it, and how many members are in each group. And I can drill down further into the read-write group here, and it should list me all the different users who are in there. And I can now add a user. And there we go. That's me adding myself in. Again, it's not the quickest. It's not the most responsive thing at the moment, because it's connecting to the IPS service rather than to a database, and that takes time. So the other option, of course, here for group management is I can remove a user. So I'll just undo the change that I made. And there we go. And there, I've gone. So the final thing that I want to show you is the ability for an identity manager to do some management of the other users. Everything I've shown you so far, or the user management I've shown you so far, is self-management. This is about I'm manager 1, but I want to be able to change some details on another user. So I pick this identity that I created before, and there I can see it, and I can edit it. I can remove the mister, and I can make the change. Now, obviously, that identity was created through AAF, and so a lot of the fields should not be editable, and that story is in progress to make that so, but didn't get completed by the end of this sprint. But it is work in progress for anyone who's worrying about such things. I know it concerns Terry a lot, but that's coming. I'll actually just cancel out of this change, and that essentially was everything. So thank you very much.
Okay.
Questions?
So, yeah, questions. I hear
It's Toylan here. Hello. David, you said that eventually, if you came in from AAF, you won't be able to edit your details, like name and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it a bit strange then? Will you still be able to edit if you came in through other ways, if you got created not through AAF?
As things stand, yes. I mean, I'm assuming that not editing things from the AAF isn't controversial, because we're using the AAF as a trusted source of information, and so we shouldn't be making changes to that to push back up. So is your question really that we shouldn't allow other changes just to stay compatible?
Yes, something along those lines, because it feels funny if you came in through other ways, then you have the scope to change your name and everything, and AF people do not have that scope.
Yes.
It seems to be balanced the wrong way, you know what I mean? It seems that AF people should be more trusted, so that they have more power rather than less power.
So, Toylan, the problem with that is, so as David said, we rely on the AAF, and the way their trust model works is the original IDP that provides the source must make those changes. So we just can't edit those, otherwise we break the trust model of the AAF. There is the instance, though, where we might invite an individual in to participate who doesn't come in through an existing authentication mechanism. So if they haven't come in through the AAF, or they haven't come in through a social system like Google or LinkedIn, where their identity has been manually created, for example, by an RDSI node who have just created the account so they can provision the storage. If someone makes a mistake, we have to have some mechanism for going in and fixing their name, fixing typos, those sorts of things. So that functionality will have to be there for some people. Whether we let the end users do it themselves or whether it always has to be an identity manager is something we can work out. But I think there will always be, in some instances, where we want to edit these details.
Oh yes, I agree with that. It's just a question of whether end user can change their own name. But that's fine.
Can I make an observation rather than a question in the fact that your big login button on that front page, the AAF login button, it's not entirely obvious that it is a login button.
I noticed that myself when I was doing the dry run of this yesterday. I was hoping nobody else will. It doesn't change colour as you mouse over it. It doesn't say login this way. I fully accept that.
Sorry. Okay.
I'm sorry, somebody else was speaking out, or maybe it was feedback.
It may have been feedback.
Might have been feedback.
Any other questions?
David, with the deletion of people from the groups, what are the rules around who can do what?
Right. At the moment, as you see, the groups come in a set of groups. They come in this tuple of 4 groups, each of which is associated with a particular allocation. As we move forward, that will evolve to a more sophisticated model of corresponding to a service rather than just an allocation. But for now, it's an allocation. And essentially, if you are in the admin group that is associated with an allocation, you can administer the groups. So you can do the adding and removal.
Okay, thanks.
And we, at the moment, the assumption is the people in that admin group will notionally be collection owners, and anyone else they choose to delegate the management with the access to the collections to.
Can someone who's an administrator delete themselves?
At the moment they can, but we do have a bug ticket in to say no, they can't.
Or rather, they could remove themselves, but they can't. There must always be at least one administrator in the group.
That's right. They can't move the last one.
Okay, great.
Okay. Good questions. Any other questions? Okay, well, next portion will be Terry will give a short presentation on the architecture of the system and the changes we're intending to make. Obviously, if there's any further questions on the demo part, then feel free to think about it and come back to us at the end of Terry's section. So I am going to hand over control to Terry. Sorry, Terry, I'm just going to find your slides. There. So Terry, are you able to control things there?
Yes, I think so.
I just want to check here with David. Are you able to see?
I can see a completely black screen.
Same here.
It has the decoration around it.
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a diagram, and this is what I'll be talking to. From the top down, we have the authentication aggregator, and that's just a name that we've come up with. And that allows the authentication to happen via AAF or social login. That's one component. The next component down is the web portal component that the Intersect folk are building, which has a web application. We'll have a database for users and groups in the next iteration. And under that database will be provisioning and filtering engines. Below that will be a number of domains. We're now moving to a model where each node will operate its own separate domain, but all the information provided to those domains will be sourced from this reX user and group database and pushed downwards to the domains. So that's the 3 major components here. Authenticator, we have Australian Access Federation now, and we'll be doing social authentication in the future. The reX portal, said that, and the domains, and that's probably the thing that we're most interested in. Each will be an IPA domain consisting of 2 replicas, and sufficient Red Hat licenses will be purchased. We're currently proposing 3-year licenses to start with premium support. That may change. Looking at how identities work through this system, anyone at all can register an account in the reX system. They use their AAF credentials for a higher level of trust and therefore access, or their social authentication as an identity that may be known to others, or just provide all their personal details off the bat, which David showed us earlier. These identities are not automatically provisioned into any domain until the nodes determine which identities will appear in their node's domain. The nodes will have a number of, may have or can develop their own business rules. I know there's a few nodes already have their own business rules, processes and procedures for allowing people into their directories at the moment. Those can flow over to the system. Alternatively, membership of identified community or entitlement groups will flow down into a domain if that group also flows down into the domain. And I'll talk about that a bit later on or shortly. The user may appear in multiple domains or multiple nodes, but the same attributes are provisioned to each domain if that user is entitled to be within that domain or node. Their credentials, their passwords, secure SSH keys are all kept in synchronization from the top down across all of the domains that user is a member of. And that's important later. Groups within the system, collection services, allocations, if you like, will have a relationship with one or more of the nodes. So they will come and talk to the nodes and arrange access to some storage or some HPC or whatever. And groups are created for those collections. Those collection groups or allocation groups are then only provisioned to the nodes that services the collection. So if there's more than one node that services a collection, those groups will flow down into multiple nodes. And that's the next point. If a group spans a number of nodes, okay, that service or collection is being serviced by a number of nodes, then the groups will push down into those nodes' domains, and the users of those groups will also be pushed down into those nodes or domains. So this will ensure that access to collections will work independent of which node services the collection. So if there's multiple nodes servicing a collection, all of the users who are in groups entitled to use that collection will appear in those nodes to be able to access that collection. The node domains themselves, each node domain will be completely separate from each other. So issues that occur at one node will have no impact on any other node across the domain, and something just happened bizarre there. Let's do that again. We wait for PowerPoint to catch up.
I guess while we're waiting for PowerPoint to pack up, any questions at this stage from folk?
It's Hoyland again.
Yes.
So the previous model was nodes. It's optional for nodes to be running a replica. Is that still the same, or you have to run a replica now? Because to be in a domain, you need to have a domain.
Yes, you have to have a domain. At the moment, the AF is not looking at running a domain or a nationwide domain that will be publicly available. It may do in the future. But we will most likely run one from the start, but not make it available to anyone until the AF's more comfortable in how this thing will be used.
So the upshot is for a node to actually be able to use REX, they have to have a replica hosted at their institution.
No, they have to have a domain, which is not a replica, it's their own domain.
Right. So you don't have to run, you can still have a domain, but you don't need to run your own servers.
I'm not sure I understand this. You'll be, where's the PowerPoint? There we go. Skip down to that.
Well, I guess the previous model was there'll be a master copy of the old app server running, and then there'll be replicas of the old app server. And it was optional whether the nodes actually run their own replicas. Like if they didn't want to run their own, they can just communicate with the master one. Is that still the same story here?
Not at the moment. Let's do it this way. If we just go back to the top picture, each node in this diagram has a domain.
Yeah, that's
There
right.
is this others domain, which will most likely be an AAF run domain, which will be a nationwide domain. And if the nodes choose to only use that one, they then no longer need to run their own domain. They can point at that. that needs to be clarified with the steering committee how that's going to work.
Yeah, I think
If the
I was confused
Sorry.
by this diagram because I guess it's showing the concept of the domains as well as the physical deployment of servers and replicas, and they may not be the same thing. They might not be
Right.
one-to-one, right?
Yeah. So we've taken out the AF domain at the moment, just to make it simple and to work through any issues that may sort of come out of the 3-month hiatus. It's going to be put in place shortly, or as soon as this model is in place, and that will also give the AF a better understanding of how this thing works and whether they're willing to operate a nationwide domain in this space. But
Terry,
I see sorry?
just a point from Reese. Monash told me their authorization systems cannot point to model LDAPs. And so one of the problems we're trying to solve here is how do we provide this information into an LDAP service that's actually also got other sources of identities and groups.
So Monash can't do what, sorry?
Their authorization systems require a single LDAP service.
That's not entirely true, but it's the case we're working with at the moment. The system that we've commissioned at Clayton has the ability to attach to one directory service. Now, at the moment, it would be good if that one directory service was reX, but since it has to take things from a number of sources, there's some talk about possibly organising it to go by some other means, of which reX is one of them, that feeds in through some sort of proxy.
Yes, and my point is, I think that's the general model we need to support, is the general solution.
Understood.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is there are other sources of identity and there are other control issues, and I think reX has to input to that rather than own it.
Right. Okay. So how does how do you mean by own it? They only.
It's just the language. It's just the language that's you're using here, Terry. That this domain will be only so the actual service that service providers will use reX and other sources of identity and groups, and we've got to figure out how to do that.
Yep. So if it's a node only, one node service that plug into one node. If it's a multi-node service, then they need a sort of more nationwide type node or directory to plug into. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think that's what reX does. reX lets you run nationwide groups with common user identities, but the actual service operator itself will have its own authorization system. So it's how to go from your database to those LDAPs is what we're trying to solve, and I think the schema is a really good step forward, which we need to get on with. And this delivery mechanism is, I think, the only unknown, Terry.
Right. Well, that's what we're trying to work out with this particular diagram.
Yeah.
And this is what we'll be deploying for the 3 months testing period. Now, if there's an AAF node or not, that's up for discussion. Happy to run one of those up if it's needed, or as it's needed. Okay, back to the final slide. This is just the current thinking. So each node domain is completely separate. All user information is sourced from the central reX database, but it may also, as Reese has indicated, be sourced from elsewhere into that database, into that directory. Node domain infrastructure will be the same. Each domain will consist of 2 Red Hat servers running IPA software on virtual servers. licenses will be provided. If nodes want to run more servers, then they have to go and get their own licenses or additional licenses. The LDAP schema will be consistent across all of the domains. The directory layout, OUs and so forth will be consistent. But the individual nodes can extend the layout at their own discretion, as long as it doesn't interfere with the operation of the local domain. And each domain will support a common set of protocols, such as Kerberos and SSH and so forth. This will allow all the collections to span across the nodes, but there may be issues around that one as well. So it's a work in progress, but we think it's a step in the right direction to get us to a solution that will suit everybody, or most of you.
Terry, can I ask a couple of questions? Firstly, on slide 1, the arrows from the portal to the node domains only go in one direction. So in other words, the information flows out of the portal into the LDAP servers, correct?
That's correct.
And in this design, how will we accommodate collections which want to offer their services via an operating system other than Linux? So for instance, Windows in particular.
We haven't actually tested how Windows plugs into this stuff. That's an unknown.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Okay. Any further questions?
Siobhan, if I could, I'll make a quick comment. Hopefully the audio is okay because I'm on the end of a very thin pipe, thanks to the hotel I'm in. So Terry's put together this diagram and these slides. What Terry and I will do over the coming days is actually put some more documentation around this so that we can actually, and I've already started to do this with Terry, is actually explain the different scenarios and how that will work and how the whole process and the architecture will work for everyone. So we'll circulate that out in the next few days, probably early next week, given my travels at the moment. And that will hopefully then help people understand a bit better, but also allow people to ask some more informed questions once they see some of the further detail.
Okay, thank you, Richard. And as I stated at the beginning, I will be, this has been recorded, the session, so I will be working with the RDSI office to make this recording available on their website over the next few days. And as always, if there are any questions, please let me or I will Terry know. So if there are no further questions, I think we'll leave this for today. I will follow on with some slides after this, and we'll take it from there. So I just want to thank you all for your time, and we'll be talking again.
Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Stephen?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Can I catch up with you after the thing?
Sure. If you want to do it via landline, that's fine. Or you want to just keep on going on with Zoom.
Oh, we'll just keep going with Zoom. I think there's only you, me, and Siobhan left. Is that all right? Are we still in, or do you need your laptop back?
I might need my laptop back if you don't mind. Go back and send out these slides. I'm just going to stop.